Welcome to Training Wheels. I'm your host for this roughly 1 hour session, which is made available through Cindy Krupp's I Am an Open Door, or an open door as we call it. It's Tuesday, November 19th, and I'd like to welcome everyone to this discussion. We're going over A Course in Miracles, and we're doing all the lessons. We're on lesson 10 this morning. And I want to say, by way of introduction to this lesson, that you can put my book aside. If you'd like to read my book, The Training Wheels, by all means. But as I was saying to Cindy a little bit earlier, when I reread this lesson yesterday afternoon that I had written, I just thought, holy moly, how much I have grown since 2019 when I wrote those words. So happy to have written them, so in my knowing, so beautiful the lessons are. And yet I look at what the Amy person wrote, and I see, well, she scratched the surface of the water, but she didn't go down to the depths of the pond. So this morning, we're going to go down to the depths of the pond a little bit, as much as we can do at our current level of awareness, which I think is deepening together. And so I would invite you, you could keep your eyes open or closed. This isn't really going to be a meditation. It's just going to be my thoughts about the lesson. But I invite you to relax and take them in, and then we can have a discussion. We can share our thoughts about what this lesson means. So I'm going to turn my screen off so no one's tempted to watch me and I'm not tempted to watch myself, and we'll just begin. So sit comfortably in your chair wherever you are, whether you're listening now or you're listening later. Lesson 10 proceeds from the previous 9 lessons. Lesson 10 is, my thoughts do not mean anything. Lesson 1 takes us from nothing I see means anything, and I have given everything I see all the meaning it has for me. I do not understand anything I see. These thoughts do not mean anything. These thoughts do not mean anything. I am never upset for the reason I think. I am upset because I see something that is not there. I see only the past. My mind is preoccupied with past thoughts. I see nothing as it is now. My thoughts do not mean anything. This idea, my thoughts do not mean anything, applies to all the thoughts, underlined all the thoughts of which you, the egoic mind you think you are, is aware of. This idea applies to every single thought that arises in the egoic mind. The emphasis now, though, is on the lack of reality of what you think you think. A Course in Miracles uses this phrase a lot. What I think, I think. What the egoic mind, the separate self, thinks it thinks. Previous lessons emphasized the past as the reason our thoughts are meaningless. The past is not here in the present, so thoughts about the past really cannot be used to inform the now moment, unless we are aware that we are bringing them into the now. What this lesson, my thoughts do not mean anything, is really trying to do is help us understand that there is a gap between thoughts. This lesson tells us that our mind is really a blank state. It's a blank slate. It is the gap between thoughts. What this lesson is really getting to is that I am the silent awareness that is aware that a thought is arising now. This is from lesson 51. The thoughts of which I am aware do not mean anything because I am trying to think without God, or love, or the absolute. What I call my thoughts are not my real thoughts. My real thoughts are the thoughts I think with God, or with love, or with the absolute. I am not aware of them because I have made my thoughts, my personal thoughts, to take their place, the place of God's thoughts. I am willing to recognize that my thoughts do not mean anything and to let them go. I choose to have them be replaced by what they were intended to replace. My thoughts are meaningless, but all creation lies in the thoughts I think with God. Love the absolute. My thoughts, my personal thoughts, the thoughts I think, do not mean anything. From lesson 52. I have no private thoughts, yet it is only private thoughts of which I am aware. What can these thoughts mean? They do not exist, and so they mean nothing. Yet my mind is part of creation and part of its creator. Would I not rather join the thinking of the universe than to obscure all that is really mine with the pitiful and meaningless private thoughts I think I have? Would I not rather join the thinking of the universe than to obscure all that is? And lesson 53. Since the thoughts of which I am aware do not mean anything, the world that pictures them can have no meaning. What is producing this world is insane, and so is what it produces. Reality is not insane, and I have real thoughts as well as insane thoughts. I can therefore see a real world if I look to my real thoughts as my guide for seeing. So what are real thoughts? We already know they are not the thoughts I think I think. In other words, they are not the personal mind's thoughts. We also know only the thoughts I think with God, only the thoughts I think with all that is, only the thoughts I think with absolute love are real. And so we first turn away from the world of thought and we go inside. We enter the silence. We look on the world as the silent, ever-present witness to thoughts arising. And we see that it's just that. Thoughts just arise. And with that understanding, as the witness, now there's a space between the being witness and the thought arising. That space gives us room to begin to end our personal identification with thought. But it doesn't stop there. We begin to see that all there is the witness being. And we see that it is everything. The idea of me is just another thought. The idea of me awakening is just another thought. It's a story strung together. The mind loves the story. It's fun, but the witness is just as happy to be still and to rest in being. And so as we begin to identify, to experience, to stop and rest more and more deeply as the witness, we realize that awakening is nothing. It is simply dropping the idea of being someone or something, and that there's really nobody there. It's so, so simple. And this is where we turn another corner. A Course tells us, I have sane thoughts as well as insane ones. I can see a real world if I look to my real thoughts as my guide for seeing. It says, yet my mind is part of creation and part of its creator. Would I not rather join the thinking of the universe than to obscure all that is really mine with my pitiful and meaningless private thoughts? What this is saying is everything that arises in your purview is you, and it is all divine. There's no separation between what we think we see and what we are. It comes to me that this journey is like being on a trapeze. We are afraid to let go of the bar we are holding onto, the personal self, because we don't trust that there's another bar right there in front of us to grab onto. And that bar is our identification as the divine, with the divine. We could just let go and swing, and the other bar will magically appear to take you effortlessly along. Let thoughts come and go. Don't hold on to them. Just don't grab them and claim them as yours. They are just arising. This lesson, my thoughts do not mean anything, continues to open the door to the awareness of our true nature. There really is nothing to do. Awakening is just dropping the idea of there being a separate person. It's so simple. Once we begin to drop the idea of me and you, or me and the world out there, or I am my thoughts, the rest just falls away naturally. There isn't anything to do but keep thinking with God's mind, which is the same thing as seeing everything as the divine it is. There isn't anything to do. There is no person doing anything. You will never wake up. Waking up is the same thing as seeing everything as the divine it is. The personal mind never wakes up. The thoughts of the personal mind never exist. Our experience in the moment is God's mind experiencing itself through us. That's all there is to it. Just know this and be it. That's it. My thoughts do not mean anything. This idea applies to all the thoughts of which you are aware. So come on back and let's share what this lesson means for us. What I wrote in this in Training Wheels is, this is what stopped me short. It says this lesson, this idea applies to all the thoughts of which you are aware, or all the thoughts of which you become aware in the practice periods. But it also says somewhere in here, I'm not going to be able to find it. I am my thoughts. That's what I wrote in, oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong book. That's what I wrote in Training Wheels. I am my thoughts. That's where I was at my level of awareness. I am my thoughts. And while that's partly true, it's not the whole thing. And this idea, when I wrote it, I am only the thoughts I think with God. I think for many Course in Miracles students, we don't know what that means. I don't know what God's thoughts are. How can I understand this lesson? It's only when I so accept the idea that the divine is what I am, that I will begin to accept that every thought that arises is the divine arising in itself. That's where we are now. Right? And it is so simple, it is so personal, and it is so up close that we overlook it. And as Cindy and I were saying before, make no mistake, this world will draw you so deeply into it all the time. Every time I say, I want, I feel, I need, I see, every time I use the I word in a personal way, which is what this world does all the time, I'm very subtly reinforcing that I am not the divine. Right? Be vigilant, as the Course says, be vigilant about your thoughts. Right? And forgive every thought of separation. And by forgive, it means just overlook it. It's not real. We have to be in this world, but not of this world. And so we do. But we are all just God dancing with itself. Cindy, thank you for allowing me to stop talking.
You don't have to ever talk unless you desire to.
I never talk.
I am inspired to share an experience that occurred today relative to this teaching. And it's fun because, anyone that wants to show up before we hit the record button, please do. I tend to open this meeting somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes before we actually start whatever the meeting is. And there's this surprise and delight by what happens in the conversation before the meeting. But David was talking about a mind at home with itself, which is on in, by the way, here after reality check, we're talking about practicing the presence, and then maybe it'll be a mind at home with itself. It's another one of those books, but I'm reading it too with a couple of friends. And this morning I was reading, and I read two things very specifically. One was this line. It's just a short line. It says, the sane mind has no fear. Myron Katie. A sane mind has no fear. And then she went on to tell a story about a couple of months after she awoke. She was sitting on a couch and she went to stand up and her legs weren't working. I don't think I ever heard this story before. Mm-hmm. Her legs just didn't work. She's like, it felt as if they weren't there. And she said that she just put her hands on them and she loved them. She said, thank you for all the ways you've carried this body over the years. You've been so wonderful. And she just sat there and waited to see what was going to happen next, just in love. And she said after about 45 minutes, the legs came back on, but more alive and more vibrant than she had any recollection of them ever being. And this whole chapter is on how we're not our body and it's only the mind and all sorts of stuff that fits very well. But I read that, and then I went into my dyadic experience. And at one point in the dyad, and I'm still like in this experience, I heard very, very clearly. And I wrote it down, so I'm going to read it because the thinking mind's still attempting to pull me out of this. It's just clear. What I am and everything I see is divinely loved and perfectly cared for. And any evidence that conflicts is simply not true, meaningless, and nonsensical. Nonsensical comes in Joel Goldsmith's voice because he loves that word. So essentially, what I am and everything I see. So any being in my experience is divinely loved and perfectly cared for. And any evidence to the contrary is simply not true, meaningless, and nonsensical. Now, the experience of those lines, I can accept it based on everything we're talking about, right? And I do. Like, if I don't accept the truth of that statement, then what the fuck? Like, every single teacher that we hang out with holds that belief structure, right? Points in that direction. This has various levels of yeah, but that arises, and there's a physical. When this first hit, literally, I almost couldn't speak. Like like the body was like, no way. No way is XYZ divinely loved and perfectly cared for. No way can Cindy simply stop worrying. Like that was the energy. Like, who would I be if I just accepted that all thoughts separate from what I am and everything I see is divinely loved and perfectly cared for? That would require the stripping away of every fear or worry thought. But based on everything Amy just shared, fear and worry does not exist in God's thoughts, like everything we've ever discussed. States quite clearly that there's no fear or worry or anxiety in God. So all these thoughts that are tainted in any way with a problem to solve requires a belief that what I am is not divinely loved and perfectly cared for and never left my source. And there's a physical sensation happening right now that says, don't go there. Don't just rest knowing just how divinely loved and perfectly cared for. Feels a little insane, but it's so cool to talk about it, right? You know, where am I going to place my believing attention in this moment? In a physical sensation of resistance or in trusting everything that Amy just said? You know, do I trust, the pointing that all there is love? And we are perfectly cared for, or do I want to feed the sense of resistance? Anyway, that's what I got, Amy.
Thank you, Cindy. As always. Good morning, Richard. What you got for us?
Morning, everyone. Since I had this analytical mind going all the time, when I got to this lesson, many years after doing the lessons, I mean, I don't know when this popped in my head, but as a separate self, I remember coming up with the idea that there was a phrase back in the 80s or 90s, you are what you eat. And it was a dietary thing. And then after studying the course for 20 years or so, I thought, no, I am not what I eat. I am what I think. So if I think I'm a separate self, that's how I react. If I think I'm the Son of God, then maybe that's how I react. So that way of analyzing things really helps me. So when they came to this idea, and when I read the lesson, and it talks, some of the other lessons also talk about my thoughts, real private thoughts, which means the separate self can have private thoughts, because to me, there's only one mind. So all minds are share all thoughts had by every separate mind. Every thought you have is shared with everyone. And for me, that was a really big idea because I wanted to be truly helpful, and all my thoughts are not truly helpful. So, and then I had to take it further. I said, well, if separation doesn't exist in reality, there cannot be thoughts in reality, because thoughts are separate within themselves. One thought is different from another thought. So in reality, all is one. There cannot be thoughts. So there are no God thoughts. There are no separate self thoughts. They just don't exist at all. So there's only isness or beingness, and being everything and isness as everything. But so then who's having these right thoughts the Course talked about? So I had to, it's a one child of God, or the one mind, that thought is separated from the source. In order to get rid of the guilt, sin, and fear in his mind, it projected the sin, filth, and guilt out of his mind and created the world that we experience. We are the dream figures in that world. So when you come back to the one mind that thought is separated from source, they still have thoughts. If they remember who they really are, which is the Holy Spirit, there are thoughts within the Holy Spirit that we then extend to the dream. But these thoughts are not real. They're still separate from all that is. So I had to take it to that level for me to be comfortable with what I thought the lesson was trying to teach me about reality. So I love you all, and that works for me. I'm not saying it works for everyone, but
I think that's great, Richard. I really appreciate your clarification. What you said that really struck me was that the absolute has no thoughts, because each thought is a separate thing unto itself, and that reality with a big R just is. It's just ising. And that it is the Holy Spirit, for lack of a better term, it is the bridge between what we think and the absolute, which allows us to recognize that every thought is just a form of separation. That was delightful. I love that. As I move into just more being, I find there's no thoughts in being. It's all just arising. And the witness isn't thinking about it at all. It's just witnessing what's happening. And the more we practice this, the more it becomes what we are. So thank you very much, Richard. David, what you got?
Well, I was just thinking about what you just said when Richard was talking, and I was thinking, what are real thoughts and what are God thoughts, and how do I tell the difference? And then I got to thinking, God is no thought, and it's like God is the rest between the notes, and the notes are the thoughts. And sometimes they're discordant and nasty, and sometimes they seem kind of good, but they're still thoughts. And it seems like our thoughts, whatever is I don't know if the thought is generated and then goes back through our memories and grabs some things to take along with it to bolster or to beef up that thought. What I was thinking about was, if we've never seen anything before, we can have, up until that instant, we have no thoughts about it. Like the story about the Native Americans seeing the boats coming across from in the Atlantic, and they can't see them because they have no reference points. So, but I don't know where I'm going with this. But anyway, if I sit there and just I was thinking about the thoughts, which is kind of interesting itself. But if I just sit there and if I don't have a thought, that's God. I mean, and I know that's God. I mean, I can sit here and say, but I have to. It's almost like I have to think that, but it's something different than thinking. It's knowing. It's being aware that, okay, that's God. I know. I'm aware of that. I know that. And then and if I can just clear off a thought and say, let the thought go, get the hell out of here, thought. I need to make some room for God. And there God is. There the oneness is. It's just there all the time. All I have to do is set the table for God to come in. And because God is always ready to eat it, with me. So I know I'm weird, but hey, you guys gotta love me because that's the deal, right?
I love your weirdness. Set the table. God's always hungry.
Okay, I'm done now.
Thank you, David. What comes to my mind from what you said, and I really do appreciate all your words, all your thoughts. Rupert Spira, in his talk recently, just said, the closest we can come is I. That would be, if there was anything in the absolute, it would just be the knowing I. And then we have the I am. And that's actually the first thought is am. I exist. I know I exist. That's the first thought. And then I am, fill in the blanks. Everything after that is nothing but a qualifier. It just takes us further and further away from I-ing. So thoughts are really nothing but qualifiers. And that's okay. That's fine. I mean, have your thoughts. But just know that as you rest your feet in both camps, this world and the big R real world, which is the world of no thought, as Richard and David pointed out to us, the world of no thought. We sink more deeply into the world of no thought as we practice this. There isn't anyone practicing. As we let go, just let go of the personal mind and rest more comfortably, more deeply in the stillness of the I. And Alka says, just remember, you share your being with everyone. Alka, that is the most healing thing I think we can understand about our world at this moment.
That's Rupert Spira, not me.
Well, as we all know, Rupert is just channeling the divine one. So thank you for that. You know it's true, or you wouldn't have shared it. Right? So as we, experience this world, which seems to be just hammering at our front door all the time, and as our friends and neighbors cry about, what's going on in the world, whatever it is. And as we're tempted to judge or to even to not judge, even as the personal mind says, well, I won't judge, and therefore I'll be thinking more with God's thoughts. Even just the decision to not judge can sometimes be the decision of the personal mind. Right? There is no judgment. There is nothing to judge. But we all do that until we don't. Right? So don't judge your judging. Right? Love yourself. Truly, deeply, unconditionally. So as you leave this meeting and maybe join another meeting later, or just join with what arises in your presence this day, keep your illusionary feet in both camps. The real world, where we have to judge or see the separation as real, or we will walk into a wall. And no one wants to do that. Yes, look out. Here come to judge. Yes. I love Flip Wilson. Here come to judge, because he is the preacher of the church of what's happening now. Right? That's the church we all belong to, the church of what's happening now. So we don't want to walk into any walls, or walk into another person, or walk in front of a bus, because we are source experiencing itself through this apparently separate being. Enjoy it. But what this lesson seeks from us is that we have our balancing foot more firmly planted in the I am awareness as we move throughout the day, and that our balance increasingly becomes from that place. So go out and suffer what you suffer. Think what you think you think. Engage with those around who really are completely in the camp of the separate being and the separate self and the separate world. But be your own divine self in the presence of all of that. And that is your teaching, right? That's your silent being teaching. Richard.
I just wanted to share that I am more and more every day. I'm loving everything I experience, whether thoughts, feelings, whatever it is, I'm embracing it and loving it, because that's why I'm here. The I am is here to experience Richard as he is, and Richard as he thinks, Richard's story, his memories, his thoughts. So I love it all. I'm learning to love it all. And that's a major step for me. What's coming up in my awareness, I embrace it. And I'm getting better at it every day. And the more I do it, the happier I am. So love you all. Have a great day.
Thank you, Richard. I love that. What that says to all of us is that even someone that's as steeped in A Course in Miracles, and that has the wisdom that you have is still opening, and still opening. You know? And I want to, before we go, I want to thank Cindy and I Am an Open Door, because she's really giving us the opportunity to deepen these teachings. Thank you. Love us. And Michelle, this is a message for you. I think we can go ahead and do the book, the audio book. But boy, we need to review some of these lessons, don't we?
That is awesome. That's yes.